It was a cold, rainy night when Alex moved into their new apartment, a small, slightly run-down unit in a quiet neighborhood. Rent was cheap, and the old building had a charm that felt almost welcoming. The landlord had said the drafts were normal, just part of an old building. Alex settled in, thinking nothing of it. But on the first night, as rain tapped against the windows, they woke up around 3 a.m., a strange chill filling the room. They lay there, eyes scanning the shadows in the dim light. For a moment, they thought they saw something, a dark figure near the door, motionless and looming. But as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. Alex dismissed it, chalking it up to exhaustion and shadows playing tricks on them. But deep down, a sense of unease lingered. They couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The nights passed uneventfully until 1 week later. As Alex was lying in bed, they heard it. A faint shuffling sound coming from the hallway outside their bedroom. They froze, straining to listen as the sound grew louder, moving slowly toward their room. The footsteps were slow, almost dragging, like someone was unwillingly pulling their feet along the floor. The sound got closer, and then silence. It was as if whoever or whatever was there had stopped right beside their bed. Alex lay perfectly still, heart pounding, convinced it was just a neighbor in the hallway. But something in them knew that was no ordinary visitor. The following nights became a nightmare. Every night at 3 a.m. the footsteps returned. Always the same slow, methodical steps that paused just next to their bed. Alex would lie there paralyzed with fear, barely breathing, hoping it would pass. But each night, the presence felt stronger, colder, like it was slowly growing closer, invading their space. They tried to tell themselves it was just a dream, that it was all in their head, but they couldn't ignore the growing dread that filled them as the clock approached 3 a.m. One particularly rainy night, Alex decided enough was enough. They stayed awake, determined to confront whatever was haunting them. As the clock struck 3, they heard it, the familiar dragging footsteps approaching. Alex's hands shook as they grabbed a flashlight, flicking it on and shining it around the room. But there was nothing. The footsteps continued, getting closer, even though no one was there. It was like the sound was inside their head, relentless and mocking. The air grew cold, and a shadow seemed to gather at the foot of their bed, darker than the rest of the room. Alex could feel it watching, its gaze heavy and suffocating. Desperation set in. The following day, Alex called the landlord, demanding answers. The landlord's voice turned quiet. He admitted, reluctantly, that the previous tenant had left suddenly, abandoning all of their belongings. They said there was someone else in the apartment, the landlord whispered. Someone who only came at night. He brushed it off as nonsense, but Alex could tell he was hiding something. They were more frightened than ever, now realizing they weren't the first to experience this horror. But it wasn't until the following night that Alex truly felt terror. They tried to stay awake, but exhaustion overtook them, and they slipped into a restless sleep. And then, at 3 a.m., the footsteps returned. This time they weren't alone. A chilling breeze blew through the room, followed by the unmistakable feeling of someone leaning over them. Alex's eyes shot open, and for the first time, they saw it. A shadowy figure standing by their bed, its face obscured in darkness, yet its gaze piercing, cold, and empty. The figure reached out, its hand hovering just above Alex's chest, fingers elongated and shadow-like, as if it was drawing the very warmth from their body. Paralyzed, Alex could only watch as the figure leaned closer, close enough that they could feel an unnatural cold seeping into their skin. They wanted to scream, but no sound would come out. It was as if the figure was draining their voice, their strength, leaving them powerless and weak. Minutes felt like hours as the figure lingered, its presence oppressive and overwhelming. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, the figure melted into the shadows, leaving Alex gasping for air, drenched in sweat, and feeling as if they had aged years in a single night. After that, Alex knew they had to leave. They packed what they could carry and left the apartment without looking back. Later, they discovered the previous tenant had been found dead in the apartment, cause unknown, but with the same terrified expression they had seen reflected in the mirror each night. They could only hope that whatever had haunted them hadn't followed, but they could still feel it, a lingering chill that haunted their dreams and made them dread the hour of 3 a.m., wondering if it might one day find them again.